And now we are preparing our hearts as we continue to feel the love, to see the love and hear the love from our beloved practitioner, Eugene Holden. He's been a student of science of mind and spirit for over 33 years and has been a licensed religious science practitioner for 15 years. Eugene worked at Home Office for Centers for Spiritual Living, both as a program manager, then department manager of World Ministry of Prayer for 10 years. Eugene has been a contributor to the Science of Mind magazine for 12 years, currently writing the monthly affirmations and the daily guides, 1 month per year. He's touching lives around the world and right here in our community. From 1995 through 2001, Eugene served as imam in the Muslim tradition at a mosque in Southern California. Eugene served as spiritual director for various alcohol and drug treatment centers in Southern California. Currently, Eugene is the spiritual director for Business Honoring Spirituality, located in Lakewood, Colorado. Eugene has over 18 years of experience as a teacher and facilitator for different groups. He has facilitated retreats for ministers, practitioners, laity, and board of trustees. Eugene has been a repeat facilitator for various men's groups. He allows vision to guide him. It is prayer that fuels him. He's deeply committed to this teaching, and it's his purpose to joyfully inspire others to remember who and what they are. We are the of light. He believes that together we can reveal the kingdom of heaven here on earth. And as Eugene says, heaven is ever expanding good. Welcome, Eugene.
Reverend Mo, thank you so very much. Oh, I am so very excited to be here with my family, CSL Greater Baltimore. And I want to first say thank you to the Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson for allowing me to come and play with this beautiful community. One of the things that I have learned throughout the years is that it takes trust. It takes trust for a minister to hand over their pulpit, you know, to someone. And so I am very grateful for my brother, Dr. Reverend Raymond Anderson. And I am so grateful for Tracy Rhymes, who does all that she does. Kay Suzanne, it's good to see you on the line. Heather Jones, my beloved Amy Perry, and everyone else, everybody out here on Facebook or on YouTube. I am just so very grateful to be here. So let's jump into this. So the theme of the month is inclusion in action. And so today's talk is to experience inclusion in action, we have to come from a united state of consciousness. We have to come from a united state of consciousness. So to experience inclusion in action, one of the things that we have to start or stop thinking about or stop focusing on is diversity. Now, why do I say that? Because diversity just is. Diversity just is. You know, we have this wonderful thing where, I mean, everybody on the line, we are so very diverse. You know, we get to, you know, nature is so very cool in that, you know, there are so many different flowers and trees and different types of grasses and all sorts of things. Diversity is a wonderful thing, and it comes from the same source. So you can call that source whatever. You can call it God, you can call it universal consciousness, you can call it love intelligence, whatever you call it. Know that it is one unified state of consciousness, and it all comes from the one presence. It all comes from a unity, one unit of potentiality. So as Dr. Ernest Holmes says, since all is included within this unit, we find our particular good only through unity with life. We find our particular good only through the unity of life. See, from this diverse world, this diverse universe, which is connected with the one thing. See, we can't find our good when we are excluding ourselves or excluding someone else. In order for us to experience the good, we have to include, thank you, Spirit. We have to feel that we are included in the unity of the one. See, inclusion in action is really about recognizing and acknowledging that in this diverse world, in this diverse thing that we call life, we are all one. Inclusion in action is recognizing and acknowledging that in this diverse thing called life, that we are all one. You know, it's an interesting thing when you think about it around the world, right? That we all want the same thing. Everybody really wants the same thing when you get down into it. Everybody wants peace. Everybody wants the experience of abundance, however that may look for that particular person. Everybody wants a space to share their creativity. Everyone wants love. Everyone wants to have the space to give love, and everyone wants to have the space to receive love. You know, so out of this unity of life comes all of these diverse ways of showing up. I mean, so I want to go back to this diversity thing just for a moment. And I know that I said that we don't want to focus on it, but what I want to say is this. If the world were not diverse, right? Man, wouldn't that be boring? There is an old song back in the day by the Shy Lights. And there's a line that said, if everybody looked the same, we get tired of looking at each other. Right? So it's so good to have this feeling of diversity, but now what we're talking about is including, taking your spice, taking my spice, taking everybody else's spice and putting it in this great big pot thing, this thing called life, and coming up with so many beautiful flavors. So how do we go about experiencing this inclusion? Well, I'm glad you asked the question. How we do this, I love this, right? Thurgood Marshall said, in recognizing the humanity of our fellow beings, we pay ourselves the highest tribute. In recognizing humanity, the humanity of our fellow beings, we pay ourselves the highest tribute. So for me, what that means is when I recognize the beloved in someone else, when I recognize the humanity in my fellow being, I am paying the highest tribute to myself. Because here's this thing about recognition. To recognize means to know again. You know, to recognize means that there's been some point in some time where I've known humanity or I've known that person. The dictionary defines the word as identify someone or something from having encountered them before, to know again. So again, to recognize the humanity in our fellow beings is to have known humanity in ourselves first. See, this is why we pay ourselves the highest tribute, because in order for me to recognize humanity, in order for me to recognize beauty, in order for me to recognize grace in anyone else, I must first recognize it within myself. You know, I said recognize and acknowledge, right? And I want to say something about the acknowledge because that's important. it's one thing to recognize, right? So Dr. Ray can walk into the room and I can recognize him as he walks into the room. Oh, there's Dr. Ray. But if I don't acknowledge him, then there's no connection. Yes, there is a slight connection in the recognition, but if I don't acknowledge him, right, then that connection is not as strong as it could be. So when I say to recognize, I also want to say we also want to acknowledge. We also want to acknowledge that which we are recognizing. So as I begin to recognize humanity within myself, I also want to acknowledge it. I want to make sure that I am a part of that. So to acknowledge, I love what the dictionary says about this word. To acknowledge is to accept or admit the existence or truth of. To acknowledge is to accept or admit the existence or truth of. So yes, we want to recognize that we are all one and that we are wanting to recognize and acknowledge the inclusion of everybody. I mean, you know, we take Safi's music, right? And if there was only one chord, you know, it wouldn't be the same. But what happens with all of these chords, she includes all of these chords and all of these harmonies. So we can see that in this inclusion thing, taking all of these diverse notes and then including them and making them a part of this beautiful music that she shares with us. So then we get to acknowledge, you know, Safi for that music that she brings because it touches our lives. Because why? She has included us in her art form. She's included us in her love, You know, we're wanting to come to the awareness that everything is connected. Everything has something to do with everything else. You know, and one of the ways that helps us to recognize that is nature. So Johann Wolfgang von Goethe said, in nature, we never see anything isolated, but everything in connection with something else, which is before it, beside it, under it, and over it. You know, one of the things that I got during my beautiful experience in Islam, the Quran is so full of so many beautiful verses in ayats. And one of the ayats, one of the verses in the Quran says, and Allah said, if I did not make another ayat or verse, nature would be more than enough for mankind to learn from. So how I interpret that is if that great divine did not write another verse, nature is more than enough for us to learn from. So look how, you know, I want to have us look at this picture, go beyond the words, but you can see all of the diversity there, right? You have the mountains in the background, you have the grass in the foreground, there's a log that's lying on the ground there are trees, but also pay attention to, there's a sky, and then there's a cloud, or there's a mist that's in the clouds. So there is everything that is involved in this one unity of life. This unified field of consciousness is showing up as so many different things. And it's just a wonderful thing, right? So here we go. So then the question is, all right, Eugene, I hear what you're saying. We don't want to focus so much on diversity because diversity is. And so we are talking about, you know, being more inclusive because that's what we are really talking about. I love the times that we are in. Oh my God, these are beautiful times in spite of all of the other stuff that is going on. Yes, there are people, man, and we get to pray, we get to hold that consciousness, we get to hold that high watch, we get to know the truth, you know, where people are passing away, by a lot of things. COVID-19 is one. People being killed by law enforcement is two. People being killed by other people, that's something else. And there are protests going around on a global scale. And even in the midst of that, that's really good. You know why? Because we as human beings, we have this beautiful way of coming together. We have this beautiful way of coming together in times of stress, in times of anxiety, in times of all of this turmoil. So how do we start practicing inclusion in action? How do we start to jump into that? How do we start to do our part? As I was saying, we as human beings, we have this beautiful ability of coming together in times of crisis and in times of tragedy. I believe this is because, and it was spoken of, Heather, thank you so much for that spiritual practice of unconditional love. See, we as human beings, we have this innate feeling within us to come together when there's a crisis. And this is because love is the healing balm. Love is a healing balm that causes us to pursue the highest and the best. So how do we do this, right? Lao Tzu, as they say in some circles, is the beginner, is the one who brought to the world, Tao Te Ching. The Tao, he talked about the philosophy of Tao. And Lao Tzu says, love the world as your own self. Then you can truly care for all things. That's pretty close to this scripture that's in the New Testament when they were asking Yeshua Messiah, Master, what is the greatest commandment? And he said, there are two. Love the Lord thy God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and your might. Then I love the way that it's written, because then it says, and the second commandment is like unto the first, is like the first. And that second commandment is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So to love our neighbor the way that we love ourselves. Now, here is what the challenge is, or could be. That loving ourselves, unconditionally, and Heather, I'm glad you brought that up, unconditional love. See, because for me, unconditional love means that I love you, I love me unconditionally. I love you no matter what you do or don't do, no matter what you say or don't say. So love the world as your own self. So what we get to do is we get to go within. Before I can love anyone else, let me make sure that I love me. Do I love myself unconditionally? Do I love myself in spite of the mistakes that I have made in the past? Can I forgive myself, which is an act of love? Can I forgive myself for all of those past mistakes? And if the answer for me is no, then that's where my prayer work is. That's where my work is. Let me let go of whatever I'm attached to that would keep me from loving myself. Oh, but here's the thing. Once we get into that, I love me, I love the world as I love myself, then we can truly care for all things. See, it is in this deep unconditional love that inspires us to be all that we can be. To be all that we can be for ourselves, all that we can be for our partners, all that we can be for our families, all that we can be for our families, all that we can be for the world. So how do we now get into this action thing, right? So here are 4 things that we can do to experience inclusion in action, because together we create. So one of the first thing that we can do is to recognize the unity of life. To recognize that there is only one life, there is only one power, there is only one presence. Now, we can name it whatever we want to name it. Some of us call it God, some of us call it Krishna, some of us call it love, some of us call it, universal intelligence. Whatever it is that we call it, we want to recognize it, but also acknowledge it. We want to recognize that all of this is one, because as that tag on the wall says, together we create. Then the next thing we want to do is to identify that we are one with all of life. We want to recognize, or we want to be sure that we unify with what we've recognized, right? That I am one with what I've recognized. So when I recognize that we are all in this together, then I am one with that. Now here's the thing. That means that infinite intelligence, that love, intelligence, that beauty, that grace, that which has created all that there is even in that individual who may have pushed the button, who may push your button. Here's that old saying, I'm sure a lot of you have heard this. They may have pushed the button, but they didn't install it. Now, I know I said that once and someone says, well, but my mother, right? Or my father. But here's the thing, is we get to even recognize the infinite intelligence in that particular person who may be showing up as less than what we might be thinking. But we are to recognize that we are one with that person. So that individual who may be pushing that button, hey, I'm one with that person. I can come up with a bunch of examples, but I won't, no, but I will use this. Oh, wow. See, Spirit? Whew. To be one with those people who commit crimes, to be one with police who may have choked out someone, to be one with the current administration of the United States of America, to be one, right? And so because I need to recognize, if I say that I am a spiritual practitioner, a practitioner of grace, a practitioner of love, a practitioner of beauty, then I have to then have the courage enough to recognize the divine even in that person there. Oh yeah, let me go one further, that I am one with that person because I am one with all of life. The next thing we want to do is to love others as you love yourself. Love others as you love yourself. And again, I want to go back to that's a great question to ask ourselves. Do I love me? And do I love myself unconditionally? And knowing this beautiful community, the answer is yes. And even if there's a little bit of doubt there, that's okay, because we can love ourselves enough to do the work, to let go of whatever it is, to let go, to let go of the guilt, to let go of the shame, to let go of the pisosity, to let go of everything that I might be hanging on to that might keep me from loving myself unconditionally. And then when I start to love myself unconditionally, then I can love others as I love myself. Now, from this love, the next thing we want to do is to go out and serve, get involved. Now, whatever that looks like for you, if it's about going out and marching, then great. If it's about writing your congressman or the Senate or whatever it is, well, then great. Even if it's about smiling at the next person that you come across, great. But go out and serve and get involved, but not from a place of I have to do this, or this is not right. No, we are getting involved. We are going out and serving from a place of love. See, this entails us all getting into action. We are coming to a place where we get to experience inclusion in action because we are coming from a united state of consciousness. We are coming from a place of knowing that out of this one power, everything is created. Out of this one field of consciousness, all of life is maintained, all of life is sustained, and all of us are a part of this one. Let's pray. How grateful I am for this opportunity to speak this word. See, because I know that the word that I speak right now is truly the work in the word of spirit, and the word of spirit is always made flesh. So I give great thanks because I know that this word is already done, that this treatment is already demonstrating, that this prayer is already answered. And so I give great thanks as I recognize and acknowledge first and foremost that there is this divine infinite intelligence that governs the universe through divine law and unconditional love. And yes, I know that it is called by so many names. Sometimes it is called God. Sometimes it is called Allah. Sometimes it is called Krishna. Sometimes it is called Voodoo. Sometimes it is called Olodumare. But whatever it is called, we choose to call it forth into our conscious awareness, recognizing that it is at the very center of all of life. And having no circumference, there isn't anything that can, does, or will exist outside of the presence of God, for truly God is all there is. For in the beginning, God, the Alpha, it is the Omega, and it is all in between. So now, recognizing and acknowledging that this thing that I call God is everywhere present at all times, I know that at all times it is present right where I am, revealing itself in, through, and as the I am that I am. And as I know this to be the truth of my life, I know this to be the truth of each individualized expression of the one here on this call today, here in this virtual reality, this reality that is spreading out all over the world, right where we are, right here, right now. God is, we are. And so it is from my awareness of our oneness in God that I speak this word for divine right activity that is happening all around the world, for the soul's purpose of guiding each and every one of us to experience a highest and greatest good, the highest and greatest good that Spirit has in store for each and every one of us, not just here at CSL Greater Baltimore, not just here in the United States, but around the entire globe, for truly the earth is our home that we are here to take care of as it takes care of us. So knowing that we let go of anything that would block that, knowing that we let go of each and every thought of fear, doubt, and worry, we allow these thoughts to fall away into nothing, knowing that all of those thoughts are now turned and loose and never to return again, we get to turn the other cheek to look in the direction of peace. We look in the direction of love. We look into the direction of beauty. We look into the direction of creativity, creating a world that not only works for all, but a world that is absolutely lifting us up, because we lift up the world. So for this and for so much more than my eyes can see, for this and for so much more than my ears can hear, for this and for so much more than these words can ever possibly convey, I remain forever grateful and thankful. It is from this space of gratitude that I now release my word into the beautiful and dynamic activity of love and of law. I know that as I release this word into the law takes these words, makes these words, molds and shapes these words, and then returns these words unto us absolutely and abundantly fulfilled. For the law has no other choice. It cannot help but to return these words unto us completely fulfilled. Therefore, we just open up our hearts, our souls, and our minds, and we accept that this word is complete. And so it is. Ashe. Amen.